Welcome to a succession guided tour looking at the progression of secondary succession from soil to trees here at Tobacco University. So when we're looking at and comparing succession, here we're looking at just in this overall image and pan, can we pick out abiotic and biotic factors? Think about what's living, what's not living, what are we seeing overall, and this beautiful look outside of the school. Think of what biotic and abiotic factors we see in the image in this slow pan. Now here, as we progress from the asphalt blacktop, walking down this kind of walkway here, what are we noticing about the area? How is it treated? And what is preventing or encouraging levels of succession? What species are we seeing in this low-growing area here? How is the species going through a change as we work our way down? What's happening in certain areas as we work our way further from that asphalt walkway? We're noticing about the species here and how is that changing? In addition, how do we think the progression is occurring where this stone dust is located? So here we see some stone dust, and I'm sure this was all a nice solid path of stone dust. How is that changing here over time? Now here again, we're seeing that progression. Here we've walked a little bit further, and we're approaching this tree line in the distance. So what's kind of occurring here now? What's our species changing? What are things looking like here? And how are they different than where we last left the stone path? This is just kind of a reverse look of where we walk towards the tree line. Kind of give you that appreciation for what changes might have occurred over that given space there. Now, as I pan in this area, we notice there's a change in topography in this particular spot. In addition, we see a distinctive tree line. We're going to go a little bit closer to that tree line, but what's kind of allowing that tree line to be so distinctive in this particular area? As we look at this area, now that we're at the tree line, we're noticing about the species that are located in this area. We're getting to that autumn, fall time, some nice turning colors. But what are we noticing about the species? And we'll kind of get a little closer. We start to look kind of in and within the area here. So as we come right on that line here of that nice open area, and we get to that distinctive line that I talked about developing, which is right here, we're noticing the change. What's occurring here? What are we noticing? How are the species differing? How are the heights of the plants differing? How are we looking at the type of species that are differing? Notice this one growing right out here. So these are all important considerations when we're looking at succession. Now, if you look under the trees right here, we're not seeing a lot of that grass. If I kind of zoom out here a little bit, we're seeing here's our nice grass line. But immediately it abruptly ends, and underneath those trees, you're not seeing a whole lot of grass in there. Definitely a change. So why is that occurring? Why is the grass not growing there? So if we look at the oak tree behind me here, the question is, how tall is that oak tree? If I'm about 5'10" or so, how tall do you think that oak tree is? And also, not how tall, how old do you think that oak tree is? Keeping in mind, we have a nice grassy area here, we have some underbrush. How old and how tall do you think that oak tree is? Now, different conditions can lead to different forms of succession. Well, we're noticing here, this area traveled quite a bit, and that's clearly changed the species or what's living here. So how is what's going on here on the fence line changing the species, and how are they going to go about adapting and what's going to come in and kind of fill in this area if we stopped having people walk down this path. What's going to change about the infield if no one was to visit this area for 5, 10, 50, 100, 300 years? What's going to change? What's going to be the first species we're going to see in this area? If we kind of look as a little hint on this side here, you can already see some species already starting to kind of take the first establishment of this area. But what else would occur? How quick would it occur as well? Then we also want to be thinking about not only the infield here, we also want to be thinking about the outfield. So if you kind of look over by the scoreboard there in the outfield, how is that going to change? So as you walk along the path here, we can almost see succession occurring. This area is recently constructed, and the area immediately following the pathway definitely has a lot of that stone and gravel. And as soon as we start progressing away, clearly we see a return here of a very different set of species. And pan closer to that main walkway where it was most recently disturbed. Now if you look at this tree that's on the edge of the walkway that we were walking down here, we're noticing the presence of lichens. So we have these lichens living on the tree. They're very slow growing. They're not going to do any harm to that tree there, but we can see them definitely present in great concentration over on this side here. Progress around, we do see them present here, but not quite as aggressively growing. This gets a little bit more sun, a little more of a stressful environment. When we're talking about lichens being able to tolerate very stressful conditions, just looking over a little bit here on a stone brick wall, we can see a whole bunch of lichens starting to get established right here as they're progressing down. Again, a little shadier on this side, but still it doesn't have to be a living host for them to live on. Here we can see them doing just fine and progressing on the side of this building. So here we're looking at some pine trees, and right now I'm pretty far away from the pine trees, and if we look at the grass, we can see definitely pretty healthy looking, a couple clover in there. But as I work my way closer to the pine trees, we'll notice starting here, the grass starts thinning out a little bit. Starting to notice the grass isn't looking so good. Over here it's getting even thinner, finer, and as you get really close to the base of this tree in particular, noticing almost no grass growing at all. We do notice some pine needles, and this was recently mowed, so how does that play into the inhibition of competition? How are these pine trees altering the environment directly around them to help prevent any competition from species? Because if I go and pan just a little bit further away from those pine trees, we clearly see a change that occurs. And that's not that far of an area, so there's not that much of a difference in environmental conditions, at least from a large scale. So what are these trees doing to alter their environment to help eliminate competition? Now this area right here was recently mowed today, and we see on this steep angle here, the lawnmower slipped a little bit, causing a scraping of some of the grass. So since we're looking at succession, we've kind of cleared off this area right here where the tires slipped. How is that going to affect? What's going to come in first? How is this area going to be restored to, quote, its normal? What species are going to be first to come in? So if we kind of look and see where was that grass was pushed off, what are we noticing? What's going to happen here? So this is just a small scale example of how succession can occur when there's a stress in a particular environment.